And a quick thanks to GreenFi for sponsoring this video. I have made the fact that I'm doing a no-buy/low buy for 2025 a giant part of my personality, and that's because I've never been quite so motivated to spend as little as possible as I am this year. And if you haven't already seen my video where I talk about my whys for my no-buy, I'll link that video in the little cards in the corner for you. But if you haven't seen that video, if you didn't know I'm doing a low buy, you might be new here, and you might need to hit the subscribe button. If you're interested in consuming less, in spending less, in being kinder to the planet and people, this is the place for you. And in today's video, I want to talk about all the boycotts that have been being discussed in the news, on social media. If you are anywhere on the inner or outer skirts of being an environmentalist, a social justice activist, if you know any of those things, you know that there are so many reasons to boycott the brands that we're going to talk about today. But I also just want to talk about the concept behind boycotts, the misunderstanding I think that people are getting when they're hearing the news of a boycott. So we're going to discuss all those fun things. I felt particularly passionate about having this discussion because a lot of the brands that are on the boycott list that have become like a topic of discussion over the last couple years are brands that I try not to give my money to pretty much at all costs. For the last couple years, my big motivation for at least things that I'm purchasing on a regular basis, things that are part of my regular routine, is to move away from conglomerate and multinational corporations. This is because if you look at their history and lack of transparency, their human rights violations are massive. Their violations to our planet and our natural resources are unending. And that's not something I want to give my money to. Not only that, but these giant conglomerate brands kill every other smaller brand in their category. Normally that, or they buy them up. And I don't like any of those practices. It takes away our ability to have a choice in what we're supporting. It takes away our ability to demand transparency. It disrupts absolutely everything that I believe like an economy should function as, which is I support brands and give my money to brands that I want to see more of. I vote with my dollar to tell a brand that they are doing good. And when giant conglomerates gobble up all of my opportunity to do that, it leaves us with no choice. It is not good for anyone except the very wealthy people at the top. And what I found so interesting about the discourse happening online around these boycotts is that this is the first time a lot of people have seen the violations that these people have done. This is the first time that it's been brought to their awareness that big brands aren't their savior, aren't these great, wonderful beings, or maybe just people hadn't considered it before. But there's a caveat to all of this that I think is really important, and that context I wanted to add to this discussion, which is that because these larger brands gobble up these smaller brands, the fact that there is not a hardware store within 20 miles of me that is not a massive corporation is not my fault and leaves me with very little choice when I need to purchase something in the emergency, like a pipe breaks in my home. So because of that, when we call for boycotts, it's not meant to shame you when you have to purchase from these brands, because oftentimes we don't have a choice. But this is to say that brands, some of the ones we're going to talk about, are ones that people are consuming and buying and voting with their dollar towards that doesn't need to be done. They are not essentials. And those are the things I think we should talk about, because as more brands have come on this list and more people have tuned into why you shouldn't shop with these brands, it's become an issue of, well, where should I shop? And the answer is you shouldn't. There's this quote that says, use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. And that is the mindset that I think we're supposed to be approaching these boycotts with. If you can avoid making that purchase, that's what you should do. Not shopping unless it's absolutely necessary, with the understanding that a lot of these brands have squashed out all of their competition, if you can even call it that, to make it to where you almost depend on them. And all of that to say that my main message on this channel has always been to meet as many of your needs secondhand as possible, to always try to use what you have, use what your neighbor has, borrow things, try to find it secondhand on Facebook Marketplace, thrift stores. There's so much out there to consider when trying to make an ethical or a sustainable purchase. And at the end of the day, to me, whatever is already on this planet is not impacting the supply chain for more natural resources to be torn down, for more people to be exploited to do those things. If I can avoid all of that, that is the most sustainable option, and that has always been my primary concern. When I get flustered with all of the questions and wonderings about how to do the most perfect thing, everything for me comes back to that. And I should also share that I am someone who deeply cares about people and planet. So a lot of the reasons that I am tuned into these boycotts is because these brands are not only exploiting people, but rolling back their promises to marginalized folks, trans folks, immigrants, following this really problematic culture shift we're witnessing right now. If people who have a 7+ figure net worth pointed at the most vulnerable people in our society and told you they're the problem, and you believed it, when those people are literally your equal in so many ways, that is the problem. And I just want to preface a lot of what I'm going to say in this video with that. Real quick, I want to take a second to thank today's sponsor, which is a brand that I have been a customer of for years, and that is the brand GreenFi. Switching my bank account has to be one of the most low effort swaps I made to live more sustainably. I think I got worked up in my head thinking it was really complicated, but GreenFi makes it actually very simple. And now I can sleep much easier at night knowing that my money is not going to funding oil and gas pipelines or coal-fired power plants. And yes, that is what most traditional banks do. Your deposits will never go towards oil, gas, or coal, and instead, you can actually earn up to 3% APY on your savings and get up to 6% cash back on verified sustainable businesses, many of which I already shop at and fit into my personal God tier sustainable brands, including Thrive Market, Misfits Market, Blue Land, and Who Gives a Crap. And all of that to me is like traditional bank business practices, right? They've already gone and made their actual business more sustainable. And then on top of that, you can round up your purchases to help fund tree plantings. You can also offset your carbon emissions of your gas purchases if you drive with GreenFi Plus. And hopefully if you're watching this, you are willing to make switches like this in the name of being kinder to the planet. But I'm also a pretty firm believer that the alternative should just be a good swap. And in this case, GreenFi is absolutely just a good bank. They have no monthly fees or minimum balance requirements. They have over 55,000 free ATMs nationwide. You can get paid up to 2 days early with their direct deposit, and there are no overdraft fees, because why should banks profit off of us being broke, especially with the state of the economy? I think I never used to think too much about what happens with my money when it sits in a bank account, but now I can rest assured that my money is not funding things that do not align with my values. And this is definitely the easiest way to live more sustainably without even thinking about it. So if you're ready to make the switch, check out the link at the top of my description and make the switch with GreenFi today. Let's start with the biggest and baddest first, shall we? Amazon. Jeffrey Bezos. I am doing absolutely everything I can not to shop at Amazon. From the beginning, for the last several years, it's me watching every single other brand around me disappear. And I'm not just talking about small craft stores, are things that I used to support and really love to be able to participate in. I'm not just talking about small boutiques with like artisans that used to exist in Austin specifically that I've watched disappear over the last couple years. It's not just frivolous things like that. It's things as big as Joann's Fabrics. It's things as big as Best Buy. It's every single other brand to exist ever that before I would have said are giant corporations. They don't need my money. They don't need my support. But because of Amazon, it almost feels like every other existing business is a small business. And that is scary. It should be a cause of concern for everyone that a brand has created such a dependence on just about every US citizen. I can't speak to how it is outside of the US, but in the US, it is almost like if you need to meet not only your wants, but often your needs, the place you can go to do that is Amazon. I do not like where that's headed. I do not like the idea that at some point they will be just as powerful, or they already are just as powerful. A few rich people at the top of Amazon, just as powerful as the US government. They have so much influence and ability to crash not only our economy, but like our livelihoods. And it's scary to think about that. But that is the reason that my first reason for boycotting Amazon as often as possible. Along those same lines is this pretty clear trajectory that we're on towards oligarchy in the United States. I know these words get thrown around a lot, but seeing the CEOs, the founders of these huge companies sitting at the inauguration was a scary sight for me. As someone who, again, knows and has seen these companies commit a ton of environmental and human rights violations, knowing that they are only becoming more and more powerful and less accountable to the people that they claim to serve is scary. It should be concerning and scary to everyone. And that's not something I want to vote to see more of. Amazon also has endless issues with union busting. Aside from those issues, the rate at which people consume now because of Amazon, and not just on Amazon, but the Amazonification of the expectations of consumers now is, I know we throw around this term sustainable a lot. I know the term has really been watered down over the years, but at the end of the day, the rate of consumerism that Amazon has created is quite literally unsustainable. We live on a finite planet with finite resources. We can't just continue to get more and more and more and more resources to create stuff that we don't need, to throw in a hole in the ground to sit there forever, all the while polluting our air, water, oceans. Microplastics are being found in our brains. The way that Amazon has exacerbated to a level that is incomprehensible, honestly, the amount of things that are sold and shipped on Amazon every day. Not something I want to be voting with my dollar for. And honestly, with all of that context, are we surprised that they rolled back their equity agreements, their equity codes, their promise to be equitable to their employees? I'm not surprised, but I find that that was the last straw for a lot of people. So those are my personal grievances with Jeff Bezos. So a call for an REI boycott really breaks my outdoor enthusiast heart, but I'm doing a no buy year in 2025 anyway, and that's my whole personality, so I'll be okay. REI has come under fire for their union busting or their union issues. A lot of these things are denied by REI, but a lot of these things are documented by their employees. There's a whole Instagram page trying to advocate for REI employees, and I do find it really frustrating that that issue exists. I don't know that that issue alone would warrant a boycott for me. I think we can advocate for things along the way to make those issues better. I thought of REI as a brand that you could hold accountable for a long time. And so I did my part as a co-op, as a part owner of REI. I'm a co-op member, have been for probably over a decade at this point. But recently, one of my mutuals on Instagram, Patagonia, absolutely love them, posted just a call for a boycott of REI. I find this to be really significant because Patagonia is a huge leader, in my eyes, of the outdoor industry. And I know that they have literally worked with REI and several brands that are sold at REI. So putting themselves out there like that, honestly, was a big deal for me and brought to light some issues that I wasn't even aware of, which includes things like REI sending a letter of approval or like support for Trump's appointed head of the Department of Interior. If you're an environmentalist, if you've ever looked into environmental jobs, you know the Department of Interior kind of oversees a ton of those things. So we are talking about the very, very top person of that entire branch of government. It's massive. And the reason this pick was so problematic coming from this administration is because this person has called for more fossil fuel drilling on our public lands. Not just more fossil fuel drilling, not just supporting oil and gas in general, which to me is problematic. Calling for it on our public lands that are meant to be for, like, we own them. The public owns them. That is our land, is enraging to so many environmentalists. We are doing so much to make progress away from this finite resource that we should not be depending on endlessly. And at the same time, we have someone who is supposed to be an advocate for our public lands at the very top. That is your literal job, to defend the environment. And instead you are calling for more fossil fuel drilling on the lands where it is not supposed to be happening. It's enraging. And then with all of that context, for REI to write a letter of support for that person is a reason to call for a boycott. In my opinion, it is disturbing. It didn't have to be done. That's not something you can really advocate for it not to happen. They went out of their way not to correct a mistake they made. They went out of their way to make that mistake. It's so frustrating. And then to backpedal, and now they're calling for him to not push through the things that he is saying he is going to start working on. It's not enough for me. It's not enough for me. Along with that, it was exposed in the way of, like, I don't think there was mainstream awareness of this in any sense of the word, but there are execs from giant corporations who are not known to be the best to people and planet on their board, execs from things like Starbucks and Amazon. It's so frustrating to watch because as a consumer of REI, like I said, I watch so many brands get on this trajectory of they're doing great, they're doing amazing in this like kind of fringe niche. Like a lot of brands use these fringe niches to really grow because we love what they stand for. We love what they're doing. We will stand behind them because of that. And they will grow in that space. And then at some point, they really just get into maximizing profits and things just go downhill from there. But it doesn't matter because they're already into so big of a space of the mainstream, like REI has gotten to, I would say, honestly, in the last like 5 years. And you've just steadily seen them pull back on things that matter to the people who made them what they are in the first place. It's really frustrating to watch that type of trajectory, but a lot of brands get to a point where I'm like, yeah, that's it for me. Unfortunately, that's where I'm at with REI, and I won't be buying anything from them this year. Target is one that I have, I wouldn't say boycotted for a long time because I will purchase things like essentials from them. I have bought things like vitamins from them when I don't want to like have something shipped, some things like that every now and then. Target for a long time for me was my weak spot because I grew up in a pretty small town where Target was like where we went for fun. But I've never liked the fact, and the reason that I try not to go there in general is they do seem to be this source of the haul. Like I feel like mindless shopping and haul culture aligns so well with Target because it is the most universal place that like everyone can go to and spend money on silly little things that they don't need. I don't love that about them, and so it's a reason for me to pull back just in general because of the way that they've impacted culture, I guess you would say. But recently, the things that I liked about them, which was their ability to go out of their way to do work in the equity space, they rolled it all back. And I find that disgusting, but also not surprising. Because at the end of the day, putting your trust and your like belief and support behind any corporation is so fickle because they will pull it away the second it doesn't help benefit their profits. They will sell out any of us. They will throw any of us under the bus per se if it helps their bottom line. I just can't understand why anybody would think that's an okay thing to do. But as we've seen that culture shift happening, Target went right along with it. They are swaying with the wind in whatever way, again, will get them the most money. And because they're such a staple in the culture, in the ways that I was saying, in the haul culture, in the essentials, and like one of the only places you could walk in and spend money to get that dopamine hit that I'm always talking about from consumerism, they don't really have to try too hard to get your business. They have our business. We are trapped by so many of these corporations, whether we are doing the silly little haul or we are shopping for things that we need. We don't have a choice anymore. So they don't have to do this thing where they continue their diversity and equity agreements because people are going to shop there either way. Because most Targets have a Starbucks, let's just throw this in there really quickly. Exactly the same thing I said about Amazon and how they stomp out every single other business. Starbucks is the same thing. It goes without saying, for years and years, I have not been a customer of Starbucks, with the exception of during the holiday season, I would go get my favorite seasonal drink once or twice. Not for the last 2 years. Absolutely not touching them. And specifically for many years, the reason that I wasn't doing that is the way that they stomp out every other small coffee shop. And Starbucks is like the biggest point of frustration for this for me because third spaces are so important to me. If you don't know what a third space is, it's like we have home, we have work, and then we have everything else where we are able to enjoy each other's company or meet new people or just experience what community is. And specifically in the US, those things are disappearing at a rapid rate. They are soon to be an extinct species. And that scares me because third spaces are so important for building community. My dream is that at some point we will reach a boiling point where our individualistic culture in the US will have to be undone and we will come together as a community again. But it's so hard to do that if you don't even have a third space where, mind you have to pay to be. A coffee shop is still not the ideal third space, but it is a third space. And they're just disappearing. I can't tell you how frustrating that is to me as someone who cares deeply about the environment, but also community. I hate Starbucks for that reason. Aside from that, they also have been coming under fire for union busting. Like, is that surprising? Do they care about their workers? It's debatable. I know that the average employees and even the average management teams at Starbucks, this is not towards them. This is the people at the top who make the decisions about wages and rights and benefits and all those sort of things, right? So there's the union busting. There's also the firings that happened after like pro-Palestinian employees stood up for what we can look back on now and say it was definitively wrong, what was happening to the people of Gaza, and is still happening. It's not over. It's disturbing that happened. I just like, don't get me started. That is the reason I haven't even participated in my favorite seasonal drink for the last couple years and likely never will again. So Starbucks is an easy place for me not to spend my money. I will not be buying anything from them in 2025, and those are my reasons why. Now listen, as much as we are trapped into supporting these corporations often to meet our needs, as are we trapped in these tech platforms that are run by people that I would never want to give my money to if I could help it. Again, we are talking about watching this slip into oligarchy where these people have so much money and so much power and so much influence over our lives that if I could just not be on Google or Meta, I would. Unfortunately, the places where I learned all of these things are those platforms. Unfortunately, the places where I organize in Austin and online and community building in general often starts on those platforms. For better or for worse, my Buy Nothing group is one of the strongest tools for community I have where I live. For better or for worse, this platform is a life-changing tool for people to learn things. I just had to bring it up because I hate feeling like at any moment, these people with all this money, influence, and power that we have no control over could change our algorithms, could change what we're seeing, could say we couldn't say certain things, and there would be no recourse because they're just allowed to do that. They are private companies that can control our speech because in the age of 2025, that is where people are speaking. And it scares me. But it is a huge topic of discussion of boycotts right now. So I felt the need to put it in this video. All that to say, I deleted my X account, my Twitter account, whatever it's called. And I do my best not to scroll on the other platforms. The rollback of equity happening at Meta, the weird like anti-fact rhetoric happening from Meta is the reason that you're seeing boycotts being called for those tech companies. And I get it. And I just have to say, I know I'm a hypocrite. Our economic structure and currently our structure towards media kind of makes all of us hypocrites, and we can't really help it for all of the reasons I've already talked about. I have a couple quick mentions that should be super obvious. With everything I've already said, if you don't know that I would be boycotting something like Skims, Shein, Temu, those are givens. There are companies that I have no doubt have giant amounts of exploitation throughout their supply chain, from where they're getting their materials to who is sewing those materials to who is shipping those materials to who run those brands. I have no interest in. And probably several others, but those were the ones that came to mind for the quick mentions. Now let's also discuss the big three, which I call the big three: Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Johnson & Johnson. They own nearly every single thing on grocery store shelves. Just let that sink in. Genuinely, it is so hard to find something that those three brands don't own. I made a video about this probably last year sometime. I'll try to find it and link it in the cards for you, where I talked about how these umbrella brands buy up these smaller brands. And the problems with that is that the lack of transparency that comes with the supply chains once that is done is my main problem. I've seen several brands that I like because, similar with REI, I like what they're doing sustainability wise, ethic wise, with their transparency, etc. And then once these conglomerates buy them up, a lot of that disappears. Things change and I don't like it, and it's not something I want to support. And then also, once they're bought up, my money is now going to them. And they own a ton of brands that are not the sustainable brand that I was supporting that they now own. They own brands that are doing awful things like Clorox, and I digress. They own awful brands. And the really shitty part about this is, to me, that when these big giant brands that own all these awful brands doing awful things, they buy up these more sustainable ones, that improves their ESG score, which is something that people look towards when they're trying to be more ethical about how they invest in the stock market. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. These giant brands owning these awful brands and these sustainable brands, their score becomes better simply by owning the brands that are more sustainable. So at the end of the day, the awful brands don't have to change. The umbrella brands don't have to change. They just have to keep gobbling up the smaller brands that are sustainable, loosening their transparency, changing their supply chains, all the while the system just keeps going. And that is, I hate it. I hate that that is a trajectory that we are on, and it's not what I want to vote with my dollar to see. I want more transparency. I want more sustainable things. I want less exploitation of labor. That's not what you get when you give your money to the umbrella organization. So that's the reason I switched my deodorant last year. Not because they got bought out last year, but because that was the last part of my routine that was really, really hard to change because it had become such a big part of my everyday life, an essential one, okay? I used to say, I don't think you should have to stink to be an environmentalist. I still stand by that. I just wanted to stop this like dependence on these giant conglomerates. We'll see how long that lasts because I keep watching my favorite brands get gobbled up by these conglomerates. I don't necessarily blame the small sustainable brands. It's kind of the end game for a lot of them. It's just, don't get me started. Again, this is a rant that I could go on for days, but I don't blame the smaller brands when they sell out. I made a video about that recently. I'll link it up here where I talked about how one of the local brands that I loved here in Texas, Siete, got bought out by Pepsi. And I don't blame them for doing it. It's their out. It's how you retire in this world, and I want everyone to have access to that. It's just really unfortunate that that is the system that we live under, and it's not what I don't want to support those brands as much as I can, especially with things that I'm buying on a repeated basis. I would just like to not, you know what I mean? Well, these are just some of the brands that I won't be buying from in 2025. If you want to see a part 2 to this, let me know in the comments. If you are or are not supporting any of these brands, let us know why in the comments as well, and go check out the other videos that I mentioned. If you didn't know, when I say I'm mentioning it, there's like a little eye in the top left corner here. That is where you can go find all of the videos that I've mentioned. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and remember, until next time, you cannot do all the good that the world needs, but the world needs all the good that you can do. Bye, guys.